This is a big deal. The country that controls AI will win the wars in the future.
What is it that most people and even most governments don't understand about where the global economy is really headed?
These guys are doing something over there I've never seen before. You're not going to believe this.
Should he step down as Tesla CEO?
He was brutal to work with. This guy is the modern day Michelangelo.
Should Canada become the 51st state?
You're getting me down an interesting lane here, but I'm very close to this situation.
You see everything that's happening on a global scale working in the UAE's favor.
This guy is integrating AI into real estate. And I thought, that's a marketing story. Like, that's not real. But he actually has. The majority of my returns, almost 90% of companies are run by women.
What do you think it is about women that makes them better business administrators?
Okay, shut up and stay focused.
Are we going to be seeing a mass extinction of small businesses because AI is just going to be replacing so many people?
I mean, I'm so excited about this. I plan on never dying.
What is the biggest emotional mistake that people make with money?
As an investor, here's how I'm going to play it.
He's the man who tells it like it is. No fluff, no filters. From boardrooms to living rooms, Kevin O'Leary has become a global symbol of sharp business acumen, brutal honesty, and unapologetic success. He's built and sold companies for over $4 billion, dominated screens on Shark Tank, and mentored a generation of entrepreneurs with one simple rule: know your numbers and know your limits. But behind the persona of Mr. Wonderful is a builder, a strategist, and a man with his eye always on the next big opportunity. Today, we're diving deep into what drives him, what it really takes to win in today's economy, and why he's investing heavily in the UAE. Kevin, it's fantastic to have you with us here in the UAE back again.
Thank you.
Let us start with Liberation Day.
Yeah.
President Trump, he announced the tariffs, of course, a few weeks back. And you were one of those people who not only celebrated the move, but you were one of those who really went after China and went, tariffs should be 400%. Why did you say that?
Well, let's look at what actually happened that day. The pros and cons, actually, of what occurred. No administration in history has ever attempted to negotiate 60 trade deals simultaneously, of which, call it 17, make up 72% of the trade. So the countries that matter in terms of getting these deals done would be the UK outside of the EU itself, Switzerland, Italy, India, Japan, Canada, Mexico. That's 72% right there. I make the assumption, and I did from April 3rd when this was announced, that those deals would be forthcoming. And I believe the British will be the first to be signed. And that's going to happen. And one of two things will occur. Either some of these countries will negotiate zero tariff, effectively no tariffs in either direction for free trade, or what's really happening on a clandestine basis is that the US is applying a VAT tax, and they're just calling it a tariff. I don't care if you go to England, to Canada, to France, there's VAT taxes in most countries between 7 and 14%. And economies work fine with that. They get adjusted over a long period of time across all sectors. It's essentially a consumption tax. Well, if Trump ends up at a 10% equivalent tariff, I mean, let's take India, for example. India charges 110% on completed automotive from the US into India, effectively blocking automotive purchase. That's going to be adjusted to maybe a reciprocal 10 in both directions, and all of a sudden car parts can go to India, and India can sell their cars into the US and whatever. But that is effectively restabilizing the trade agreement with VAT tax, in my view. I'm okay with it. Then there's China. China has nothing to do with tariffs, in my view. Let's go back to 2000 when they came into the WTO. I've been doing business there forever, for decades. The assumption was during the Clinton era, when they came in, that they signed the accord or the agreement or the covenants, whatever you want to call them, that they would abide by them. They'd apply them to the way they did business with all the membership, all the countries that are members of the WTO. They never abided by it, not for 1 week. There are thousands of trade complaints that have never been adjudicated, number one. Number two, the IP theft is documented and rampant. Just, they don't care. They cheat, they steal, and the way you can, and I've testified just in the last 90 days, I think twice on the Hill in the US on this topic, company by company. I'm an investor. I invest in a company. Let's say $100 million goes into R&D. The product proves to be successful. It hits a $5 million ramp run rate. Within a week, it's knocked off in China and it's sold at 40% discount on Alibaba and sometimes Amazon in the US market. In some cases, wiping out the original company that created it. Even some of the simplest products. That's outrageous. That's outrageous. How long is that going to go on for? So, I'm giving you a long answer, but China is not a tariff war. China is a resetting of the entire playing field. I can't use their legal system. They can sue me in the United States. I mean, look what's going on with TikTok. You think you could do that in China with an American software product? You can't put American spyware into the Chinese economy. They did that with TikTok. I mean, there's so many examples of how this administration, and I applaud it, I'm not shilling for politicians. I shill for policy. I want a level playing field with China. I love the Chinese people. I want to do business with them. I want to sell my products in China, but I want a level playing field.
I think what you're saying is really interesting, but is 400% tariffs the answer? And I asked that because a couple of weeks ago, I sat down with His Royal Highness Prince Al-Walid bin Talal Al Saud, the richest Arab in the world, who is a friend of Donald Trump's, largely supports Donald Trump, is heavily invested with Elon Musk and X and XAI. And he said to me that these kind of tariffs are tantamount not only to a recession, which a lot of people are predicting, but it would mean a global depression. What's your take?
Yeah, my comment on the 400% was to get the Chinese to the table. I don't believe in tariffs at all. I'm a free trade advocate, period. I would want no tariffs on anybody as long as it's a level playing field on the law and the ability to litigate and complete complaints. I mean,
So how do you get the Chinese to comply then?
it's a very simple metric, and here's my assumption. I understand both sides have to look like they're going to win. I mean, I get all that. There's pressure on both sides. Trump is facing a midterm election that will start to be relevant within 7 months from now, okay? Xi has millions of factory workers making stuff for the United States, which is 39% of all consumed goods and services in the world. He has to sell that stuff. And so otherwise he's going to have riots in the street. He'll remain leader while these people are employed and feeding their families. So he's got the pressure cooker on him too. They both have to work something out. And to me, 400% was a bombastic statement. It definitely was effective. It went right around the world. But really, it's to get them to wake up and come to the table and start negotiating. But I just don't want a tariff equivalency. I want these perennial problems resolved. I want the WTO to be the place where we can adjudicate trade complaints. That's important. I want access to the Chinese market under the same rules that they get access to the US. There's one other topic we haven't touched on that's very important. As you may recall, about 5 years ago, Senator Scott from Florida pushed a law that said all companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ had to comply with GAAP. He wasn't selective on what country. He didn't care. You have to be GAAP compliant, and you have to be supporting the compliance on a regulated basis across all regulators. That's very expensive. It's very expensive to do that, and I have to do that with all my listed companies. I have no choice. Why is it the Chinese don't comply and they're still listed? And so during Gensler's era, running the SEC, he didn't enforce the law. Now, Paul Atkins just got sworn in, I think it was 48 hours ago. He's a new sheriff in town. There must be hundreds of Chinese companies listed on both those exchanges that do not comply with GAAP. I want them all delisted, as per the law, because they're competing with me and other issuers that are going after capital on those markets and they don't comply, so their costs are lower and they're competing and they're not complying with GAAP? Why? So I want that resolved as well. I want it all resolved. And I love the fact that this administration, I'm not applauding, Trump's bombastic ways and everything else, but with Trump, I always say the same thing. You have to be able to distinguish the noise from the signal. The signal, and you can see his list of litany with China, includes these complaints I just listed.
Yeah.
And I want them resolved. So the trading is not just a tariff agreement. We need to resolve the stuff with China. Then I would say to His Excellency, the world's going to be a better place because it'll be a much freer market and everybody will be much happier. A little short-term pain for a long-term gain.
Let's see as they come together and maybe discuss all of this and see what's going to happen. But President Trump announced the tariffs, then put a pause on them the very next day. Is that market manipulation?
Yeah, no, that's just Trump. I mean, that's what he does. I mean, he does not do things the regular way. Half the world has what I call Trump derangement syndrome. They can't believe he's back in office. They don't like him. They're never going to like him. I say get over it. I mean, he's going to be the president for the next 3.5 years, period. Focus on the signal, because you have to do business with him one way or another, and forget it. It's pointless to waste time with Trump derangement syndrome. That's not productive. You don't get anything out of it. So
you have to accept it, radical acceptance of what's happening.
You have to deal with the environment you're in.
Yeah.
And so I'm in that environment. I understand the volatility. I mean, tariff on, tariff off is a form of negotiation. It's best at saying it's strategic to keep everybody uninformed of what's going to happen next. Maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. It doesn't matter. I want to see these trade agreements. I'd like to see the UK agreement signed or the Indian agreement signed. Then I want to see something done with Canada and Mexico. Canada just has a new leader, Carney. He was there 2 days ago at the White House. They're starting that narrative.
And I need to ask you about that as a proud Canadian. How do you think that went? How do you think that meeting went with Carney?
Well, I didn't vote for Carney because I don't support some of his other mandates, but I have to admit he was very effective. He did a great job there. I think he's using his skill, that he's been a great administrator and leader in financial institutions. That's great. I don't agree on his policy C-69, which stops me as an investor investing in Canada. I haven't done much there, nor has anybody else in the world. And their economy has ground to a halt over the last decade. They have no GDP growth. They're massive debt. Nobody invests there. Even their own pension plans don't invest there.
Should Canada become the 51st state?
No. Again, that's the noise versus the signal. Trump disliked Trudeau so much, and another minister called Freeland. He despises them. And this whole thing started, you got to remember, Trudeau, you're getting me down an interesting lane here, but I'm very close to this situation. Trudeau was the worst prime minister in Canadian history by every measure, every economic measure. He was truly the idiot king. And he brought that country to its knees, not understanding what made Canada work in the first place was its resource-based economy. So during the first Trump administration, the idiot king was constantly throwing barbs at Trump, assuming he'd never get back in power. But that's not what happened. So I was at Mar-a-Lago when Trump and Trudeau were visiting those days, and they had Freeland was there and others. He started with that 51st state crap then, just to get back at Trump is like an elephant. He remembers everything, and he remembers what Trudeau did to him. I'm telling you what actually happened. That whole thing started then, and it made everybody crazy. Obviously, no country wants to lose its sovereignty, but it was just because of that toxic relationship with the idiot king. Now, the idiot king was kicked out because he broke the back of the individual Canadian when he wiped out 38% of their currency. Imagine if you're a Canadian and all everything you saved up, turned into the Trudeau peso, from parity to 70 cents on the dollar. That was all the idiot king. All of his policies stopped foreign capital coming into the country. So Carney was basically parachuted in after the idiot king was kicked out, and turned out to be very effective. And he only won a minority, which is problematic in some ways. But I have to say, for the first round of narrative with the White House and what's going on at the premier levels, because I'm obviously doing some work in Alberta with Daniel Smith, the premier there, things are starting to look better. So remove the idiot king, bring in someone I think Trump respects, and we move forward.
You're feeling positive about it. We've just seen the first 100 days, of course, of Trump 2.0. What did these first 3 months tell us about what the next 4 years are going to look like, especially from an investor's perspective?
Get used to volatility. That's what and I think other investors. You realize if you look at the S&P 500 closing on April 3rd, we've almost got it all back, but it's been volatile as hell. And so the VIX is, which was dormant for a decade, is now on fire. I mean, if you trade the VIX, you've got a lot of volatility there. I'm optimistic that throughout all of this, we're going to end up in a better place. And I'm not advocating for Trump's style. I'm advocating for the policy he's putting in place. This administration, in terms of actual individuals, is going to be less turnstile. Remember how in the beginning, because Trump had never run a government before, he'd never done that. And so he made a lot of mistakes in the first mandate, in the first term he had. It seems to be more stable now, including the chief of staff, Susie. She's really got control of that place. And that's very important. You need to have that core as the day-to-day goes through. And she's done a great job. So I think as an investor, you're going to be better off in 4 years.
Speaking of volatility, you've said that we're entering a new era of economic reality. And so what is it that most people and even most governments don't understand about where the global economy is really headed?
Most investors haven't figured out where growth is in terms of how they're positioning their portfolios. There's a reason I'm sitting with you here in Abu Dhabi. I've been coming here for years now. I figured something out a little while ago. This is the capital of capital, period. And it's going to remain that way because of policy, because of taxes, because of its location. This region, even though it's got volatility, has some incredible growth metrics to it. And this leadership has diversified its reliance on energy very rapidly to other sectors. I mean, for example, you think about, let's just take AI. Most people as investors think, oh, well, US leads, China is second. Well, who's third? This place. And nobody knows that. And so I shot a commercial here yesterday from my relationship with One Development. In the most sophisticated digital AI sound studio in the world. There's nothing better than that. There's nothing better than that. And I've shot everywhere. And the reason it works is they've been able to attract the talent to operate that equipment and produce it second to none. So that what we shot yesterday in probably 7.5 hours would have taken 3 days in another country. And so multiply that times 1,000,000 times in terms of productivity. Now, how do you get there? You got to have policy. You got to have the technology. You have to be able to attract the talent. Those are highly skilled individuals operating that stuff. I mean, I sent the little teaser image to my son, who's an electrical engineer working at Tesla. And he saw it and said, Dad, what the hell is that? Who did that? Because he made the assumption it was all done in post. That was shot live with a massive digital wall that was choreographed with AI. I mean, that's the stuff that anybody in television or in creating content knows is cutting edge. So that gives you an example of how much people don't know about this place. And so for me, I'm going to take, and what's the best investment you can make to capture that sectoral movement? Real estate, commercial and residential real estate. And indeed, look at the indexing of the price of residential real estate in the UAE in the last decade. That reflects the sectoral diversification.
There is a saying that says that the UAE is building the future before the rest of the world has even thought of it. This is what happens here. You're describing exactly what happens
Well, I
here.
have a different theory. I'm very fortunate because my stepfather actually worked on the water system in Abu Dhabi with the founder. That far back. He's 94. He lives in Switzerland now.
That's incredible.
He's better shape than I am. It's amazing. And my mother lived here when you could have never recognized what Abu Dhabi became back then. But so there was, that my family first being connected, and my brother worked off the rigs on his first job as a mechanical engineer, right off Dubai, right on the rigs here.
You're coming back to your roots.
Yeah, and so that's what happened. But my theory, having watched it develop, this is what I think. The leadership here was smart enough to go to every city on earth, and I think it's on a clandestine basis, and pick what's good about that city and bring it here. So they let all the experiments occur all around the world and just took the best stuff and brought it here. And what the attribute was in the end, which I think is remarkable, this is the safest place on earth.
It is.
I can wear some of the craziest watches from my collection, bring my collection with me to show other collectors here. I'm getting down the rabbit hole of watches.
Yeah.
Some of the greatest horologists are here in the world that appreciate the art of watchmaking and feel safe. And there isn't many places you can do that.
I have to ask you about this partnership that you have now with One Development, because you're not somebody who does these kind of partnerships easily. And this is your first real estate partnership in the region. Why now? Why One Development?
I've been a real estate investor forever. It's the only sector I overweight. My rule is no more than 5% in any one stock or bond and no more than 20% in any one sector. For example, crypto, I'm 19.2% right now. Real estate, I'm over 33. And that's around the world. I mean, real estate, it's a unique asset class. But what I'd never seen before when Ali pitched me, and he was Paul Pelagian runs O'Leary Ventures in real estate, and he said, these guys are doing something over there I've never seen before. You're not going to believe this. I said, well, he's a condo developer. I get it. I met them all. He said, no. This guy is integrating AI into real estate. And I thought, that's a marketing story. Like, that's not real. But he actually has. And that's what really hooked me, because think about the idea of a smart home. We've been talking about smart homes for 15 years now. There's no smart homes. They're all dumb, because every single technology in the house is controlled with a separate app. Your security, the cameras, the temperature, the door lock, all this stuff is a different app on your phone. You have to have 6 apps on your phone.
Yeah.
And they end up being so onerous, you stop using them. It's stupid. And so there's nothing smart about that. What Ali did was said, okay, screw all that. Let's overlay an AI platform that does all that work for you. So you're basically just using one application that gets more and more intelligent the more you live in your unit. That's genius. That is such a great idea that's why I got involved, because that's probably the best-selling feature of all these platforms he's building. And that's a very significant investment. But once you standardize, what occurred to me, let's say I'm developing something on Miami Beach, which I am. Mm-hmm. And I want this system there. Like, I want to use it, because I don't want to relearn it. I want everything I'm going to do here to work when I land in Miami. So I'm a royalty guy. I'll license it from them. I'll put it in that building. Why wouldn't I do that? Because it's so simple to use, which means you don't have to learn it over and over again.
It's seamless.
It's seamless.
No matter where you go in the world, you find yourself.
So he actually did what he said he was going to do, and that's because the thing about these brand ambassadorships, I don't ever shill for a product that I don't use.
Yeah.
Ever. You got to be authentic. I mean, if I'm supporting a brand, it's because I'm either eating it or wearing it or using it. With the exception of watches, I will never attach my name to one brand because I want all the watches. So, I make sure I stay Switzerland on that. But in this case, I'm living, when I'm here, I'm going to be living in Laguna. So I'm going to be eating my own cooking and using that platform. And when I leave here and I don't have the same software in the next home I'm in, so I think he has a chance, he hasn't executed yet, but he has a chance of proving it here and showing it to other developers all around the world and really end up being a technology company, not just a real estate company. I mean, building real estate, getting permits, constructing it and doing all the design engineering, that's one thing, but no one's ever applied tech on top of that. Sure, they've got a thermostat and all that, but everybody has that. This is different. So if this works, it'll become a platform play, which is on a subscription service, I would think would be very attractive. Great investment.
You're somebody who's really deep in tech, and this is something that you see as a great opportunity to take a company like this from the UAE and take it global as well. You're talking about taking it to the US and taking it global.
Yeah, but also there's a Cairo project. Cairo's a massive market.
Yeah.
Massive. I mean, and also prove it out in different sectors of real estate, hospitality. The Doe Hotel, for example, use the same software. Like the whole idea, it's easy for me to say, look, assuming he executes, which you got to do, and he's got a pretty good track record of that. You want to bet on the horse, right? The guy has to execute. But if he executes and it works, I'm a perfect partner because I'm going to say, look, I eat the cooking, I use it, and I'm going to tell everybody in the world how it works. I just let out a little tease yesterday. We talked about that earlier. That freaked a lot of people out. They said, what are you doing? What is this? What's going on here? That's just an idea of how that technology is being used to market this product. So that's very, very advanced. And I know a lot of developers.
And we're just at the very beginning of AI. Before we get in a little bit more into AI, I want to ask you about the richest man in the world, about Elon Musk, because he's been having a very interesting time in terms of being the head of Doge, of course, but then at the same time, Tesla board members have been calling for a new CEO. Is Musk distracted? Should he step down as Tesla CEO?
I have I think, a unique perspective on Elon. Let me tell you a little story that I think, I worked for Steve Jobs for a long time in the early 90s, developing all of his educational software for every Mac in his school all around the world. Rita Rabbit, Carmen Sandiego, Oregon Trail, Mavis Beacon teaches typing. These are multi-million dollar titles. And you would have to meet with Steve every quarter with my team. He was not a very nice guy at all. Not nice. But what was remarkable about him, and if you worked with him, you started to figure this out, this guy had a philosophy of signal versus noise ratio. And so the way it worked is he would say, the signal are the 4 or 5 things you have to get done, not this week, not this month, not this year, this 18-hour cycle. In this 18 hours, these 5 things have to be done. That's the signal. All the things that would stop you from getting the 5 things done, that's the noise. You need to be 80-20. You got to be 80% signal, 20% noise to achieve that 18-hour cycle. Achieving sequential 18-hour cycles is how Apple was built. He did not waste a second in a meeting. As a result, he was brutal to work with. He would just dismiss an idea, leave someone in tears, including my people. He said, Kevin, you're up 30% on free cash flow on our relationship this quarter alone. Do you have anybody else that you're making this much money with and growing this fast? No, Steve, I don't. Okay, shut up and stay focused. He was right. And look at what he achieved. You don't have to like him, you have to respect what he achieved, which I did. Now, this is what the answer to Elon is. I've only met one person in my life who's 100% signal. It's Elon. And I haven't met him many times, just a few times. I met him through my relationship with Mark Burnett, who produces Shark Tank and has for 17 years. That's my connection with Trump from 17 years ago, because he was doing Celebrity Apprentice when I was doing Shark Tank. We were selling the Forbes in New York at the same week. And Trump's a hell of a salesman. He could sell. I've seen it happen myself. So, but Elon, he's a little unique because he is so focused on productivity in the moment that he'll walk away from a conversation with 3 or 4 people. Just, you would say, oh, that's rude. He's totally focused on what has to get done, and look at what he's achieved. My son every electrical engineering team, or cohort around the world races an electric Formula One and a combustion engine one. That's what they do. These mechanical engineers and electrical engineers build these cars, and they race them all around the world. It could be in Germany, it could be in the US, whatever, it could be in Canada. No one had ever beaten MIT on the electric car, no one. Until my son was the captain, he beat him. And Elon hired the entire team. You're moving to Fremont. And they all didn't even have a choice. He just offered him a deal they couldn't refuse. And off went Trevor, and he worked there for 5 years. And there's nothing like that place. The way they operate, 6 small entrepreneurial teams. He worked on the low voltage testing team. Tiny teams driving massive productivity that no other company in the automotive space could deal with. So if people say to me, well, Elon this or Elon that, look at what he's achieved. Every mandate he set out to do, I'm his 100% advocate for what he does, including Doge, which is what you're referencing. Nobody achieves success rate like that in the world. This guy is the modern day Michelangelo, if you want to call him that, whatever. He's the Renaissance man of his age, including so many diverse sectors that he gets involved in. It's incredible. So I'm a huge advocate for him. I support him. I don't want to see him stop doing Doge. I think I'm a shareholder of Tesla. I want to keep him. It's ridiculous. The guy can juggle 15 balls, and he's proven he can. So it'd be stupid not to leave him at the helm.
We're right at the center of AI and its dominance and its rise right now. And it's not just about technological dominance. It's becoming about political dominance as well between the US and China.
Yes, I agree with you. This is a big deal. The country that controls AI will win the wars in the future. There's no question about that. Now, there's a really interesting, I've been looking at AI now since its inception, both from the investment point of view, but trying to figure out as an investor, that analogy, where's the puck going? Okay, hear me out on this. As an investor, here's how I'm going to play it. I don't know which vertical is going to win, whether it's going to be the Google vertical, the Microsoft, the OpenAI. I have no idea, but I do know this. They won't get there without data centers. And the demand domestically in the US is 45 gigawatts. There's only 5 under construction. When I saw that, it was like a light bulb exploding. I said, wait a second, I'm a real estate guy. How do I develop a gig data center? There are only 20 guys and women in the world that know how to do that. And one of them's right here in the UAE, Carl Agren. Carl works for me now. He's the guy that built the very first 100 megawatts here in Abu Dhabi. He was the guy. He lives here. He's now working with me. And he's designing the world's largest data center right now with Paul Palangin here and a whole team of experts, 7,000 acres in Alberta, Canada. Why? The lowest cost stranded gas on earth is in Alberta, Canada. What are the other states? West Virginia, Mississippi, Texas, North Dakota. I'm all over it. This is where we're going to find sites, bring Carl and the team in to determine whether they're viable for a gigacenter or larger, work with the governors and the senators in each state, do these projects as we've done proven in Alberta, where you can work with government. But I'm so excited about this. I plan on never dying. I'm going to be a vampire. This is going to be a 20 years of the most extraordinary returns in real estate development, because unless these hyperscalers get these facilities and the DoD in the US gets one, they'll lose to China. So thank goodness I'm here. That's the way I look at it.
You're going all in on this, because I think people forget that at the center of AI is all of the data centers. This is absolutely where
But
it's
it's really
happening.
a power problem. It's the power problem, because you can go to a state right now and try and get a gig of power off the grid in the US. You can't get it anywhere. So the only way to figure it out is find stranded gas. Now the company, there's a really interesting visionary guy, Mackey, the guy that runs Energy Transfer. He's my new best friend, because I'm going to stick close to Mackey's pipelines. He's got the gas. So,
To run it all.
well, let's say we find a site, but it's 200 miles from a Mackey pipeline, from energy. He'll build it as long as I give him an uptake agreement. And I'll get an uptake agreement as long as I find a tenant. So it's a really interesting symbiotic relationship, but he's the key. Energy Transfer is the largest web of gas pipelines in North America.
If you have your way, North America is going to win against China in
Well,
the AI war.
I have to be honest, I've already done this in Denmark and in Finland, and there's low power there too. So our first data center was in Norway. So I'm trying to build a global portfolio. And it's all about the energy. Can you get a contract sub 6 cents a kilowatt hour? Once you secure that, then you can build a data center.
Beyond all of that, though, as well, coming back to Elon, it's very much Elon Musk versus Sam Altman as well. When you're talking about OpenAI, he tried to buy out OpenAI. That didn't work. So what are you thinking about that?
I think competition is good. I think these two guys need each other, even though they're probably going to sue each other till the cows come home, but that doesn't matter. It's important that they push each other and advance this faster than the Chinese do. And I'm just going to be a service provider in data centers. I mean, that's really what I'm going to do. And we just Data Center World 3 weeks ago in Washington, D.C., that used to be a Sleepy Hollow little conference. It was packed, globally packed, global. Everybody involved in data centers around the world was there. And I realized, wow, look at what's happening here. So you've got the sovereign capital, engineering firms, all of the turbine manufacturers. You need to put all of these together, and I'm the right guy to do that.
The UAE is on it. We're onto those data centers as well. I know that is, of course,
well, nuclear power here is the cheapest power and the best and the greenest and the most effective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let's talk a bit broader about business. You've said that money has no emotions, but people do.
Right.
So what is the biggest emotional mistake that people make with money?
Geographic concentration. The false sense of security by thinking which country is the best place to invest. You're never right. Not over a period of time. You need global diversification, because look at what's happening right now. Look at the volatility in North America because of the tariff wars going on. Look at this place. Rock solid, stable, consistent policy. I mean, you really think about it, it's not really anything except trying to figure out where is the most stable policy on earth. I'd argue this region has got it's got volatility, it's got issues. There's wars going on around here, but you need to find the pockets where there's stable policy, because the underlying growth is phenomenal. I mean, and again, the way I index it, I always go to real estate, say, look, if you can find a growth economy with stable policy, the best way to play it is go real estate. Go commercial, residential, and hospitality. They always, always win, because you can't have growth in the economy without that infrastructure.
And so you see everything that's happening on a global scale working in the UAE's favor.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason they pulled it off was it took time. It really took time to get people comfortable enough to go long here. And when I say go long, that means set up offices, invest capital, start using, well, I'm using the ADGM. O'Leary Global's here, the ADGM. I'm pushing more and more business through here because of policy. So if I look at my last, I don't know, 5 deals, either half or more than half is actually being put through here. Very attractive policy, very attractive, tax rate. But the other thing they did right is, let me give you an example of just infrastructure. If I need to set up here a company, a holding company, or maybe a vehicle that I'm investing in, I want to use my advisors, my lawyers, my accountants, my auditors, my regulators. They all have offices here. They figured out the joke too. So I can talk to my partner in Miami or New York or Toronto, Canada, or Calgary, and the same firm represents me here. So I know that when I get audited or when I'm compliant with regulators, I'm providing information that's consistent with the ADGM, the SEC, the OSC in Canada. That was brilliant. I mean, that was actually, and even banking, I can transfer between my data center project in Alberta, Calgary, Alberta, and then my banks in New York and my accounts here in an hour. Like, that's
Incredible.
seamless. So building the financial infrastructure, the audit support, the legal support, that's actually what was being done quietly. And then you wake up, and I keep running into all the guys I work with in Boston or New York here, saying, what are you doing here? Well, we're setting up an office, and I said, who are you using? We're all using the same firms. Like, it's just, everybody's figuring out that this is what's next. And they're doing it quietly. But this place is turning itself into the capital of capital. There's no question about it. It's happening because of policy and stability. It's a pretty interesting situation.
So you see it as something that is setting up an important foundation to become a global powerhouse. It's not just something that's a trend that we're seeing right now, something that is just a flash in the pan. This is long term.
Yeah, I mean, what really happened here, and I don't think anybody thought about it this way until you actually look at it. If you go back 20 years, this economy was completely dependent on hydrocarbons, 100%. Oil, gas, that was it. Very attractive economics, and have remained so. But what they did right was to say, let's start an ever-increasing amount of incremental dollars into other sectors, making big bets. Obviously, real estate, it's so obvious what happened here on real estate. And then these free trade zones, and then tax policy that was very competitive. Then bringing in the firms that everybody uses worldwide, whether it's London or New York or Zurich or Geneva, you find the same firms here. That in itself is a big signal. In terms of making in individual investment decisions, you feel okay. I feel better that I've got my team here. So I'm not, but also as these diversifications occurred, let me give you the most unbelievable one. Watchmakers coming here. Why would a watchmaker come here? To take advantage of AI to design more advanced mechanical watches. The AI here is superior to, in certain verticals, it's the best in the world. In animation, in language, in DNA sequencing, this is the best.
This was the first country to have a minister of AI. We understood the importance of it long before anybody else did. And it's wild that you talk about all of those changes that happened here in the UAE, literally within a couple of decades. But let me ask you about investment. When you have a founder in front of you, what makes you go, I'm all in? And you mentioned something very interesting about Reid Hoffman, for example. He's like, I need to like the person before I invest. But I think you have a different view to that. What is it that makes you go all in, and what would be red flags for you?
I invested a lot of that I don't like. but I respect them. And the only thing I care about is executional skills, is the ability to say, all right, this is what I'm going to achieve this month, and then execute on it. And when they hit the bumps, which they all do, because whatever their plan was is not going to work, do they have the ability to pivot? And so there's something remarkable over all these years, like 20 years of doing, this is the section of the portfolio of a truly high risk investing, founders, venture capital, entrepreneurship. I'm an executive fellow at Harvard now. I teach this stuff. And I've learned from experience that outcomes are very random. But something that's intrigued me, I look at a portfolio of all these investments over 20 years. The majority of my returns, almost 90%, have come from companies run by women. This is the nascent startup period, sort of from the million in sales past 5 million to 50 to half a billion. And in job creation in North America, 62% of the jobs are created by companies between 5 and 500 employees. So, but if you look at the success rates from the nascent startup through to proving the product or service and then growing it, it's women. And so they're underappreciated in management, in my view. So I tend to be a little biased now, and I'm willing to back, and I still do. If you just look at this crop of, maybe I made 16 venture investments this year, the majority are women CEOs. So listen, I don't want to start gender warfare. I'd give money to a goat if I could make a return. I don't care. But they somehow mitigate risk, and it's return of capital in venture that matters, not return on capital. Until you get your capital back, you haven't made any money, because that venture could go to zero anytime. And so I care about ability to pivot, signal-to-noise ratio, the idea that they have executional skills is key. And lastly, and I've learned this myself from one of my female women CEOs, said to me a few years ago, Kevin, you talk too much, you should shut up and listen. Most people talk 2/3 of the day, listen, because everybody's got an ego, wants to get their idea out. She said, reverse the ratio, listen 2/3, talk 1/3. You'll get higher returns. And she was right, because you get more information, particularly when you're negotiating. If you shut your mouth, the other side spills because they're so uncomfortable in the silence. And I saw this recently with a really high-level executive in a major watch company. He wanted to meet. I flew to New York. We sat down. He didn't say anything. And I said, you know something? We're both doing the same thing right now. We won't talk at all unless one of us starts. Because I do what you do. I've figured out the secret sauce. So I'm not worried about it. And that, because we were negotiating something in a sector I'm involved in, watch insurance, which I'm so intrigued with. It's a sector that hasn't had any innovation in 100 years. So I've launched Wonder Care. It's a global product. It will be disruptive. And I have my first integration with POS systems in the US with a company called 1916, which is the old watch box, Danny Gubberg's company. But there's no product like it on earth. My partner, the underwriting partner, is Chubb. We've been working on this I'm so passionate about it, but it's really been hard to do this. And we spent a fortune on the tech. The tech's amazing. The policy's issued from the register, just like AppleCare, in 9 seconds using AI. Every state. Very cool. And I'm bringing it here. Going to bring it to the UAE too. There's so many watch guys here. It's crazy.
Exactly. You're wearing 2 watches right now. Yeah. But before I get into the watches, what do you think it is about women that makes them better business administrators?
We did the research. You want to know the answer?
Yes.
So we have tear sheets. We look at when you're a private company, the only thing you care about is sales and free cash flow pre-tax. You can learn everything on what's going on between those 2 numbers every week. So we try and get the tear sheets on Tuesday. So we had all the data. We went back and looked at, we were trying to figure out, how does this work? So here, in the companies run by men, if you looked over the years at, remember these are nascent startups, right? Okay. Their average target growth rate was around 31%. And they hit that target about 65% of the time. And I said, wow, that's fantastic, or at least I thought it was. Then we looked at companies run by women, and they were like just over 15%, just basically half. Their target growth was half, and they don't know each other, and they're in multiple sectors. It could be insecticide, commercial kitchens, wireless charging, whatever it was, right? And they hit those targets 95% of the time. Now, why would that manifest itself in higher returns? Here's why. Great analogy. Look at the years when Brady was winning Super Bowls. Nobody wanted to be traded. Nobody wanted to leave the team. They wanted to get that Super Bowl ring. When your team hits targets consistently quarter after quarter, not only do you make your bonus, but you feel part of something magical, and it gets very sticky. The turnover is incredibly low. And in these nascent companies, the person running compliance or marketing or logistics or whatever it is, when they leave, it's very disruptive. So you see a lot of turnover in these startups that run by men because they're not hitting their targets like the ones run by women. So what we did when we saw this data, we held a big conference down in Miami about 5 years ago, one of the hotels on the beach, and I showed the data to all of our company CEOs and said, guys, look at this data. And we brought down the targets to where we achieved success 90% of the time, and our cash flows went up almost 20%. So instead of making 15% on average across the venture portfolio on the profitable companies, because a lot of my company structures are royalties or venture debt, so I get cash flow coming in. I'm a royalty guy, everybody knows that. But the growth target went down, the cash flow went up. So what that tells you is women intuitively set targets that they can achieve, and it mitigates risk dramatically. You know, the old adage, you want something done, give it to a busy mother. I mean, it's sort of, that's what it is. And so that is the secret sauce of the intuitive female CEO just saying, look, I'm going to protect the hive, maybe. You know, whatever that is, that thing, whatever they're doing is working. And it's really working. Now, can you apply that to an S&P 500 company? Well, we're going to find out, because I think more and more women are going to rise to higher and higher positions based on executional skills. And that's how it should be. I've never believed in this, you know, gender equality thing. I don't care what gender you are. Can you execute? I don't care what race you are, what planet you're from. If you can execute and achieve goals, you're going to move up in my organization. I don't care how many tattoos you have. It just doesn't matter. And so I have tremendous diversity in my companies because it's all performance-based. So that's way better than trying to legislate diversity. Just do it on a performance basis.
How's AI going to change business? Are we headed for an entrepreneur golden age, or are we going to be seeing a mass extinction of small businesses because AI is just going to be replacing so many people?
I could see how people would have that concern, except small business now has access to AI because it's now become, the cloud-based AI services are really getting cheaper by the quarter. And so small companies, I'll give you an example. I'm in the wine business. I'll sell 3 million bottles of wine this year in the US. It's a lot of wine. I have a concern because the glass is made in China, so we've had to order a lot of bottles. But during the pandemic, just prior to that and during the pandemic, the laws changed because it used to be you make your wine in Walla Walla Valley in Washington State or Sonoma, Napa, and you ship it west of Mississippi through 3 tiers of distribution, east of Mississippi through 2 tiers. 97% of wine in America is sold for under $14 a bottle, and the majority of wine is purchased by women. Now, during the pandemic, we were allowed to ship direct 39-pound case of 12 bottles to the consumer. And for the first time, we started getting the data, the actual information of what they ordered, when they ordered it, where they ordered it from, where they lived, what varietals they liked. I can tell you this quarter, the #1 varietal for women in southern Florida will be Moscato. So using AI, we were able to forecast how many bladders of Moscato should we buy in the auction market. I mean, should we tap 19 or 20 vineyards for their Moscato output? And we did. And so we have the inventory in the right, it's located on the East Coast now, so we know to have that, and we're right within 3%. So imagine how effective the reduction of cost of capital is. So I don't end up with varietals I don't need because I've been able to forecast demand state by state by state.
Is AI going to replace CEOs or just make the existing ones 10 times richer?
Oh, I think it's the latter. I think it'll make everybody richer if they learn how to use the tool. I think the biggest challenge about AI now, and I'm beginning to realize that there's two generations, people that know how to use it and those that don't. I mean, it's a re-education to understand how to use the models and how to use, I use them every day. And we use them in our businesses just to, for example, there's 95 words in a 15-second social media post about a business. Which 95 words? So we'll let the copywriter write the first pass, and then we'll put it through 5 different models. Then we'll test it and see which one gets better engagement. And we can do all that for a fraction of the cost it would have been, 5 years ago. So in the actual images too, the digital images or the language spoken in that post, because most CAC models, customer acquisition costs, and ROAS tests. So most businesses are now 50% direct to consumer and consumer goods and services. So CAC and ROAS are the whole model. AI over that. That is just so huge right now. And it's our number one growing cost is creation of content and finding the videographers and the story writers and my number one AI guy in my company lives here in the UAE, and he does all the AI because he's got the tools here.
It's impossible to see you without seeing your incredible watches. What is it that drew you in the first place to horology and watch collecting?
Well, my stepfather, my biological dad, my mother was Lebanese, my father Irish, and they moved to, I was born in Montreal, Canada. And my biological father died very early, and my mother remarried George, who we moved to Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, at the University of Illinois. And when he graduated, he became an expert in the ILO. He was an engineer. And we started moving to, Cambodia, Ethiopia, Tunisia, Cyprus, Switzerland, Japan, 24-month assignments. And there's really 2 headquarters for the ILO. There's New York and there's Geneva. And my mother fell in love with Geneva, and they both became Swiss citizens. And so I grew up after 10 or 12 years, you have to pick. You move to the headquarters, and George moved into Geneva. We lived in a town called Doulier. He still does. So I've been going to Switzerland for 50 years. And he took me down the streets, of where the original watch brands were, because the Canton de Vaud is where Swiss made came from. And I just got fascinated. The Patek Museum, the Omega Museum, just watching. At that time, there was the moon landing, and Omega brought out the moon watch, and I really wanted one of those, and I got my first Rolex. It's a horrible disease. You don't need a watch. You can use your phone, but it's sort of, once you get into it, it's crazy, and it's a very wild community. And just so you probably know this, some of the most sophisticated and largest collectors on earth are right here. They're very quiet about it, but I know all of them. And this is a very passionate crowd about watches. And that's why when I came, every time I come, I bring my piece uniques, because when collectors get together, it doesn't matter where they sit in society, it's the watch that takes over. And I have some pieces they don't have.
How many do you have?
I have a lot. And because I've had 2 collections stolen, I have a very complex relationship with insurers. I don't disclose where they are or how many I have or in what country, but you should assume I have a lot. And what I do is they're now geographically located in cities where I go. And that's why I created the watch insurance company, because I wanted to have one of the biggest challenges in watches, first of all, they've been a phenomenal investment. I don't know if you've looked at a watch index. There's volatility in it, but if you own a Rolex from the 70s, you've made a ton of money. And some of the largest auctions ever, the Phillips auctions, the Paul Boutros auctions, are around these vintage Rolexes pre-85. It's like modern art. And you don't need the same amount of storage for a watch. You can put it in the bank vault. But the whole idea is watch collecting, to me, is about the dial. None of my, if I look at my collection, and people have seen vast quantities of them, all the dials are different. So when I see a piece unique come to auction somewhere that's a one-of-a-kind dial, it's never been made before and never will be made again, I'm going to buy that watch. No one else is going to buy it. The only guy that could, there's a guy here, unfortunately I think he's passed away, Claude Saphir, Lebanese, by the way, diamond merchant originally. He is the largest collector on earth. Now, in the auction world, you have to find out if Claude's going to bid, because if he is, he's going to get the watch. There's nothing you can do, because all the auctioneers know that. So I would always say to the lead paddle, is Claude in this auction? And they'd say yes or no. And if he's not there, I have a chance. But if Claude wants the piece, he gets the piece. If you look at his collection, he's got some of the very 001 and 000 of every watchmaker on earth. Everybody wants Claude to have their first watch, including Rolex, including Patek. Yeah, here. It's here. These watches are here. You don't know where they are, but they're in this country.
You have one watch that's always on Dubai time. Why?
It's where all the money is. I need to know what time it is. I mean, it's that simple, because I don't want to wake the guys up. Remember, it's a big shift in hours.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hours, so you really have to think. And if I don't have my phone near me, I go check Dubai time, I just look at it. So I keep local time on the left and Dubai time on the right. And it's sort of the way it is all the time. And that's a great way to do it. Lately, what's happened to me, because of the whole red band Shark Tank thing, one of the producers came to me a couple of years ago and said, you know, Kevin, we're having a problem with your watch thing. You wear these watches that there's only one of in the world and nobody can afford anyways. Because we're on a show here where we want to inspire young people to be able to buy a watch, not show them watches they'll never have. So the new rule for Shark Tank for you is going to be left hand crazy piece, right hand entry level. Get them into collecting that way. Show them something that you own that's affordable. It was brilliant. It was so great and so smart, because even my wife said, you know, he's right. Why are you such, like, what is this? Why aren't you showing people how to get into it? And that's spawned a whole new, I have millions of followers now, millions, and I work with guys like Teddy Baldassar, all of the brands now, Grand Seiko, Tudor. You know, last week at F1 in Miami, Tudor dropped a bomb. They didn't tell the world anything. They showed up one night. They invited all the watch press from around the world to a dinner at the one hotel. And after we ate, they took us into a room and they showed us a watch that I'd never seen before. Carbon fiber. It weighed practically nothing. It was a chronograph with complications. Sub $7,000 price. I went nuts. I said, this is unbelievable. And just by chance, I was on Fox and Friends the next morning, and it was on my left wrist, and the producer, you know, you're in the green room, in the remote, and he's saying, what are you wearing today, Kevin? I said, you're not gonna believe this. Look at this thing. Look at this watch. And so I went up to the camera and he said, oh, you're kidding. Is that carbon? I said, yeah. It didn't even have the red band on it yet. So in the middle of the show, they called it out and said, producer said, you've got a carbon watch on? It's all carbon fiber? And I held it up to the camera, and that thing went viral. They sold every piece. I mean, but that's what's great about watch collecting, that you can, because that's an entry-level piece that's going to be collectible forever. It's a limited edition. It weighs nothing. It weighs like a piece of paper, and yet it's so well made that you can wear it playing golf. It's so shock resistant, and tennis.
Amazing.
And cycle in it.
You're 70 years young.
Yes.
Which is insane, because you're not giving me 70. Like, I don't, like, your energy is insane.
Well,
what's your secret? What's your daily routine? What are you doing?
It's longevity. It's the longevity routine, a whole new protocol, a whole new way of living. And I must say, and it's funny you bring this up, because if you look at all the longevity clinics around the world. And the philosophy is this, it happened about 5 years ago for me, maybe it's 6 years now. I think about all the investments I make, all the capital I spend. Why am I not making me the number one investment? Why wouldn't I go invest in technologies and start to look at DNA research? And in fact, my DNA was sequenced in both Italy and here. The resolution here in Abu Dhabi at the DNA lab is the highest on earth. And so I came here, I got the data, I sent it to Cornell. I started working with a guy named Richard Isaacson. I'm part of a group, a very interesting group. It was founded by Don Walker, the ex-CEO of Magna car part company. He's very interested in longevity. And I think there's 60 of us now. We invite world leaders in longevity, doctors, scientists, researchers, to present to us every month. And because we're well known as investors in longevity, they do. Isaacson gave a presentation about 4 years ago where he claimed that dementia, not Alzheimer's, dementia was a form of diabetes. And that if you ate too much sugar and spiked your glucose multiple times during the day, you essentially fried your brain. And he proved it during a research study at Cornell. And I was blown away. So I called him up and said, listen, I got to get in this study. And so I wear a glucose monitor. I'm not a diabetic, but I monitor every food I eat and keep it between 70 and 150. And you want to be compliant 98% of the month. But you need to do so many other things in terms of just looking at how your body works and getting into a bespoke way of what food you eat, how you sleep. The number one lab on earth, lifespan in Dubai. There is no lab, no clinic like that on earth. I know them all. This is the clinic on earth where they've aggregated doctors from all around the world, lab technology, 30,000 feet of just equipment technology. Every time I come, I go through an EBO process, which is where they drain almost 4.5 liters of your blood through a dialysis process, clean it, ozonate it, oxygenate it, and then inject 50 billion exosomes, which go into your bloodstream and for the next 4 months, reduce inflation. You feel like $1 million when you walk out of there. Now, it's not cheap, but it's the best investment.
You're properly biohacking right there.
But they do even more stuff like that. The whole biome analysis, they look at all of, anyways, there's a shopping list of things you can do, but I feel better today than I did when I was 30. I've lost 40 pounds. I do intermittent fasting. All the things that I do that have become routine in my life, I can't believe I didn't do. I don't do drugs. I don't smoke.
Have you cut out sugar?
Pretty well, completely. I only eat berries. Not much fructose. The thing is, these routines become so easy when you feel that good. My only sin is wine. That's the only, I don't do any drugs, I don't smoke, I ride my bike 12 miles a day, but I drink wine, and that screws up your sleep. I don't think I can ever eliminate it, but whatever.
You're doing so much. What is the one thing that you're dying to still do right now that you haven't done yet?
I got to get better on the guitar. I need more time to practice because I'm playing a big gig in Nantucket on the 6th, and Gibson's making me a one-of-a-kind, Mr. Wonderful. A combination of the 355 that George Harrison played with a 335 neck, which is a classical rock neck, and combining this together with in ivory, Mr. Wonderful on the fretboard. I'm gonna go pick it up in Nashville, but I gotta get a whole set worked out. I need more time to rehearse. But, I gotta buy some guitars here so every night I can keep my calluses up. But I gotta get my licks ready because when you're performing, you gotta perform. So that's what I need.
I feel like the music is also keeping you young, but
yeah, it's amazing because my son is better than I am, which really pisses me off. He can play the lead to Asia. That's one of the hardest jazz rock tracks in the world. The guy that wrote the part can't play it anymore. You got to be young. You got to be sort of less than 35 years old to be able to do those half notes. But Trevor can play it. He's amazing.
Well, we can't wait to see you do it.
Yes.
Kevin O'Leary, what an incredible pleasure it
Thank
has
you very
been
much.
to
I
sit
really
down with
enjoyed
you
this.
today.
I can't wait to read this book.
Thank you so much. You're amazing.
You got it. Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. What a joy.
Thanks,
Thank you.
thanks.